南无萨怛托苏切多耶阿赖诃帝三藐三菩提伽。
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 南无大方广佛华严经华严海会佛菩萨。
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 南无大方广佛华严经华严海会佛菩萨。Homage to the Buddha's Flower Garland Sutra of great expansive teachings.
Homage to the Buddha's Flower Garland Sutra of great expansive teachings.
And the ocean-wide flower garland assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
And the ocean-wide flower garland assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。
The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning.
上人、各位法师，还有各位佛友，大家阿弥陀佛。今天是2014年3月8日，星期六的晚上。现在是在加州伯克莱圣寺。我们今天一起继续来研究《大方广佛华严经》十地品的第5地南圣地。
All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, Dharma friends, tonight is March 8th, 2014, and we're here in Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. We're investigating the Avatamsaka Sutra. We're on the 10 grounds chapter, and we're on the 5th ground.
现在中文呢已经到第54页的偈颂的部分。那首先呢，我们把这个偈颂呢一起来读一遍。那个偈颂呢会从第2首偈颂开始，就是念处为功根利剑。那我们把这一页呢4首偈颂给读完。
So we're currently on page 54. So people can open your sutra text, page 54. We're on page 54 and 55. And we're now on the verses section in the sutra text. And so we're on the second verse, and that begins on the Chinese 念处为功. And on the English, we'll start with the stations of mindfulness. So we can read this to read the text.
念处为功根利剑，
念处为功根利剑，
正勤为马神足居，
正勤为马胜足痴，
武力坚铠破怨敌，
武力剑铠破怨敌，
勇健不退入五地，
勇健不退入五地，
惭愧唯一觉愤慢，
惭愧唯一觉愤慢，
境界为香禅图香，
境界为香禅图香，
智慧方便妙庄严，
智慧方便妙庄严，
入总持林三昧院，
入总持林三昧院，
如意为足正念经，
如意为足正念经，
慈悲为言智慧牙，
慈悲为言智慧牙，
人中狮子无我否，
人中狮子无我否，
破烦恼愿入五地，
破烦恼愿入五地，
菩萨住此第5地，
菩
转修圣上清净道，自求佛法不退转，思念慈悲无厌倦。
So we can read the English together. The stations of mindfulness are his bow, the roots are his sharp arrows, the right efforts are his horses, the bases of spirit his carriage. In solid armor of 5 powers, he breaks up avenging enemies. He courageously does not retreat and enters the 5th ground. With repentance as his clothes and the shares of enlightenment his garland, with pure precepts as his incense and dhyana as his balm, with wisdom and expedience as his wonderful adornments, he enters the forest of uniting and holding and the garden of samadhi. With as you will his legs and proper mindfulness his throat, with kindness and compassion as his eyes and wisdom as his teeth. This lion among people with the roar that has no self breaks up enemies of afflictions, so he enters the 5th ground. When the Bodhisattva dwells upon this, the 5th ground, he progressively cultivates the way to ever higher purity. He resolutely seeks the Buddha Dharma and does not turn back. He keeps thoughts of kindness and compassion without ever growing tired.
现在第5地这个经文呢，已经到重诵的部分，就是在前面呢，金刚藏菩萨用长行把第5地这个菩萨怎么修行还有菩萨什么境界，就演说完毕了以后呢，那金刚藏菩萨呢，又怕与会的大众或是后世的众生，他们还没有完全明白，所以呢，就用一个重诵就是重复。把前面的长行的经文呢，用这个寄诵再演说一次。那我们听了寄诵以后，就会在意念起说前面的长行的经文到底在讲什么。所以这个在经典上常常用这样的一个方式来交互运用，就是让能够听经的人能够更明白。那这个长行跟重诵是在这个经典里头叫12分经里头，就是12部经里头呢，其中的2部。那12部经是不是说一部那个有12部经？不是的，是每一部大乘经典里头呢，它都分散了12部经。那其中的长行跟重诵是这12部经里头的2个部分。所以如果呢你前面的长行呢听过了，可能已经忘记了，可是后面呢？那个佛或是呢菩萨呢会再用一个寄诵，所以你很快又想起来，原来你已经听过这个经文了。
So this section is a repeat of the prose from before. Vajracharya Bodhisattva spoke prose in explaining the Dharma, and now, for the sake of the great assembly and future living beings, he is worried, or he sees that living beings may not understand the Dharma, so he repeats it so that living beings can review what was said before. Perhaps they forgot, and now by hearing it again in verse form, they are reminded, or it helps them learn the Dharma from another repeat, another time. So this method of prose, as well as using repeated verses, is part of the 12 divisions of the sutras. What does that mean exactly? It does not mean that there's actually 12 different sutras. Rather, these 12 divisions refer to the different ways, the different parts of just one sutra. So 2 of these parts of a sutra, one is prose and one is repeated verse. And so here, in this sutra, we have 2 of the types of the 12 divisions in this sutra. So again, the prose is spoken before, and so because there's living beings may forget the Dharma, that it's repeated to remind living beings so that we can remember it more clearly.
刚刚我们读的这个寄诵，其实很多这个法门 都是叫做在这个37道品里面的。这个37道品呢，又叫做37助道品，就是用这种37种法门来帮助我们修道。本来这是小乘的一个法门，小乘呢，佛先教他们四圣谛法，就是苦集灭道。那么在第五地的菩萨，其实也是明白了这种苦集灭道的道理，所以呢，他也修了这些四圣谛法。那么这个四圣谛法呢，有37助道品呢，本来是既然是小乘，为什么在这个大乘的佛法《华严经》里头还有这些法门呢？事实上呢，这个在大乘小乘呢，有些法是共通的，就是有些法呢是互相通的，有些是别的。所以呢，法有这个通有别，通就是大家都学习的，就像一个基础。比如说我们要盖房子，不管任何人你要盖房子，你一定要打一个地基就是房子有一个基础，你这个房子呢盖了才不会倒。所以一样的道理，这个小乘呢，他们修行的时候一定要有这种修行的根基。那么大乘也是一样，大小乘它的不同点是，那个大乘的修行呢，是除了有小乘的根基之外，同时呢，主要它的发心，因为他的发心是发菩提心，也就是说，他修行的时候呢，是为了要离苦得乐。但是这个离苦得乐，不是自己要离苦得乐，是为了所有的众生都能够离苦得乐。因此呢，他的修行是自利，然后利他，自觉觉他，跟小乘所谓只有自利自觉是不一样的。因为在小乘的修行是说，把自己的生死给了了，这个苦了了，然后呢，他就入涅槃。那这样他叫做所作已办，不受后有，就是呢，他不受生死轮回了。那这样的发心呢，在佛一开始来度化小乘人的时候，只是一个方便。所以等到小乘人的根器他成熟了，佛呢就用这种大乘的法门，再继续教导他们说：你们除了呢把自己的生死给了了之外，同时呢要来度化所有的众生，让所有的众生呢也不要再受生死的苦。
So here in these verses, it talks about the many different Dharma doors. In fact, it points particularly to the 37 wings of awakening. And these 37 wings of awakening are all different dharmas, or 37 different dharmas. They're all for us to help us cultivate the way, to realize the Tao. And for some people might recognize these dharmas and say, these are from the Hinayana. This is from the small vehicle, these dharmas. For instance, similar to the Four Noble Truths. There are people say, well, this is the Hinayana teachings, the small vehicle teachings. But here on the fifth ground, why do we see these dharmas here as well? Well, for the Bodhisattva, the Four Noble Truths are also cultivated. He cultivates these as well as the 37 wings of awakening. So, in the Mahayana, in fact, these dharmas are also part of the Mahayana tradition as well. In fact, between the small vehicle and great vehicle teachings, there are certain dharmas that are shared, and certain dharmas that are special to the great vehicle only. An analogy can be given like building a house. When we build a house, we have to start by building the foundation, regardless of what house we want to build. And so, similarly, in the small vehicle, they cultivate the 37 wings of awakening. And also in the great vehicle, we cultivate the 37 wings of awakening. This lays the foundation. However, the difference between the small vehicle and the great vehicle is that the great vehicle's aspiration is different. The emphasis is on making the bodhi resolve as we cultivate the way. And what does this mean? It means that we want to leave suffering and realize true happiness. And this isn't just for ourselves, but for all living beings. So we cultivate to benefit ourselves as well as to benefit other people. We awaken ourselves, and we also awaken all other living beings. This is different than the small vehicle, where their emphasis is on cultivating for their own realization to end birth and death and to leave this samsara. And so they're not so concerned for resolving the birth and death for all living beings and benefiting all living beings. So the Buddha taught, Shakyamuni Buddha taught this Dharma, the small vehicle Dharma, first to many people, so that they would cultivate the way. And later, when he saw that they were ready, he taught the great vehicle Dharma, and so that they would be able to make vows to save all living beings.
佛在最初成佛的12年，他观察那个时候众生的根基，只能用这种小乘法来教导。如果用太深的法门，第一个他们听不懂，第二个他们不但听不懂，可能就要毁谤，毁谤就会堕落。因此呢，佛在12年当中就讲了《阿含经》之类的经典。那这些经典在演收的时候呢，就是主要以四圣谛法或是12因缘法为主。这个四圣谛法呢，就是像苦集灭道。那这样的法门呢，其实在现在这个在很多这种东南亚的地方还是很盛行的。以南传的法师他们弘扬的法门还是这个四圣谛法，那么当地的民众呢，还是很喜欢听这个四圣谛法。以前呢，这个石法师到万佛圣城去讲经的时候，曾经讲过，他有一次到泰国去参加一个会议，然后这个会议呢，大概有几百个法师去参加，那这些法师呢，可能有800个吧，很多很多，800个比丘呢在那边聚会，在一个丛林里面，那这些法师呢就轮流来说法。他们是根据戒腊的，就是说你受这个比丘戒受多久了？根据你受戒的这种戒腊，就是你受戒的时间。如果你戒腊很高的，那就是排在前面先说法。那石法师当时已经受这个比丘戒已经30几年了，所以呢，他在那边其实还要再排在不是很前面的，因为呢，在南传有很多法师都出家很久了。不过呢，石法师有讲到说，当时呢，他们的讲法是24小时的，你会很讶异，说讲经说法24小时，而且都有听众。那这个泰国的民众很喜欢听众，他们就在这个森林里头呢睡觉。那在森林里头没有一个像我们目前这样一个道场，比如说你来伯克莱圣寺听经，这里呢有这种坐垫然后你可以很舒服的坐下来听法。那么他们在这个森林里头怎么听法呢？他们呢甚至在那边露营，就在那边睡觉。然后呢，那个听说是用那个麦克风，然后法师呢就拿着麦克风，拿那个就很多人呢在丛林的周边都可以听到这个法师在讲法。然后所有的法师就轮流来说法，24小时不断的说。那南传的法师所说的都是什么法？就是苦集灭道四圣谛法。那泰国民众呢，因为他们的根性就是喜欢这样的法，所以呢，他们百听不厌。哪一个法师讲这个苦集灭道，他都听一遍他也欢喜，听2遍也欢喜。那任何法师只要讲苦集灭道，他们都喜欢听。所以这个法门呢，在这种所谓南传的地区呢，是很盛行的。如果说呢，我们去南传的地区，也许你跟他讲这种六波罗蜜这样的法门，可能就不对机了，因为他们的根器呢是比较适合接受四圣谛法这一类的，因此呢，他们百听不厌。那么，为什么这个小乘的佛法在东南亚地区会盛行？我相信，因为这个地区还有他们众生的根性是不同的。不过呢，任何法门呢，都可以这种了生脱死的。那个佛虽然讲这个四圣谛法，但是呢，已经可以让当时他的弟子证大阿罗汉果。我们都知道，这个阿罗汉有4种果位，就是初果、2果、3果、4果。那你一定呢要证到4果的阿罗汉，才能够呢出离3界，就是离开这个欲界，离开色界，离开无色界，那你才能够脱离6道轮回，否则呢还是在3界里头。不过这个四圣谛法呢，已经主使佛的弟子呢能够了生脱死了，就是不受轮回之苦。因此呢，很多人就修学这样的一个法门。那这个法门呢，就变成是一个最基础的法门。那 所以在这个十地品里头呢，这些菩萨还是会用这些法门来作为他的修行的根基。那么等到他基础打稳固了，同时呢，他发心也很大，他可以继续修行菩萨道。因此呢，事实上是任何法门呢都是第一的，就是说，只要能够让我们了生偷死，然后呢，我们继续发菩提心，不管是什么法门，其实都是第一的法门。
So the first 12 years of his teaching, the Buddha taught you could say the Hinayana teachings, the small vehicle teachings, because he realized that the living beings he was teaching were unable to truly accept the Mahayana teachings. It was too profound, and they would not understand it. And if they didn't understand it, they perhaps might slander the Dharma, and that would cause them to have negative retributions, harmful retributions. So during these first 12 years the Buddha taught, this period was considered the Agama period. Later, during this period, he proclaimed the teachings, especially the Four Noble Truths and the 12 Conditioned Links. Now, the Four Noble Truths are the truth of suffering, the truth of accumulation, the truth of cessation, and the truth of the way. And so he taught these four truths. This Dharma is extremely popular in Southeast Asia, especially in you could say Southeast Asia, the southern tradition. They really emphasize the Four Noble Truths. Many people very much enjoy to hear this Dharma. I remember a story Rabbi Hang Shr told when he went to Thailand for a large gathering of monks. It was a big meeting, over 100 monks. In fact, it's probably something around 800 monks. All these monks came together and they spoke the Dharma, and they spoke in order of their precept age. Rabbi Hang Shr at that time was 30-some years as a monk, but still he had to wait for a while because there were many other more senior Theravada monks in front of him that had become monks much earlier than he had. So during this period of time, all these monks took turns to speak the Dharma, and they spoke Dharma 24 hours a day, non-stop. And there always were the Thai laity. They're listening to the Dharma. They enjoyed listening to the Dharma. In fact, they would sleep in the forest, and you could say it's not as comfortable as here. We don't have a building, and sitting on the floor with cushions, etc. They were out in the forest and had to listen to the Dharma, and they just more or less camped outside, and they would just have a mic and some speakers, and they would just speak into the speaker system to speak the Dharma, each one taking turns without any break. And during this time, the Dharma masters would just all talk about the Four Noble Truths, and everyone was very happy to hear it, one time, two times, multiple times. It was all something that made them very happy to hear. So you could see that their affinity and their conditions are very strongly connected to the Four Noble Truths. So perhaps if one goes to Thailand or to Southeast Asia, talking about some of the other dharmas like the 6 paramitas might not be the correct dharma to speak about to connect to their conditions, because their affinities are with the Four Noble Truths. Now, so in terms of the Four Noble Truths, we cultivate them, and it's able to allow one to end birth and death. In fact, really cultivating them to, you could say, to completion, one attains the 4th level of arhatship. Becoming an arhat has 4 different levels, and only the 4th level does one truly leave the 3 realms: the realm of desire, the realm of form, the realm of formlessness. And through the Four Noble Truths, one can leave the cycle of birth and death. And in some ways, you could say this is the most basic, most fundamental teaching of the Buddha. And so this Bodhisattva on the 5th ground still uses these kind of dharmas as his foundation, because then he continues to cultivate the Bodhisattva path. This is his starting point, and then he goes and continues to cultivate. So we often say all dharma doors are number 1. You can cultivate any dharma door, and as long as after you cultivate it, you continue on in the Bodhisattva path and continue with your cultivation. Don't stop. That dharma door is all number 1.
所以84000法门呢，其实门门第一，就讲到说呢，四法平等，无有高下。不管是小乘法是大乘法，我们讲这个大小，其实呢也没有大没有小，因为呢能够了生死啊，能够度化众生，那就是最大的法门了。那讲到这个泰国人这么喜欢听法呢，其实为什么这个听法这么重要？因为我们一般的人呢，每天要吃饭，因为我们有一个身体，我们这个色身呢需要靠吃饭才能够维持，如果不吃饭，这个色身就坏了，人就会饿死。可是，一般人都不知道，我们有一个法身，我们这个法身呢需要法食，你就是要用法呢来让我们这个法身呢能够滋长。所以，如果我们能够好要听法，喜欢听法，那么每天呢用这个法食来滋长我们的法身，那也会得到一种叫法喜食，还有叫有些人喜欢参禅打坐了，就可以得到禅悦食。所以在修行过程中，如果你能够有法喜食了，那你来听经能够听得欢喜。第一个呢，你听了不会累，你也不会疲厌。那你肚子呢不吃饭也不会饿，你不睡觉呢也不会困，因为得到一种法喜食的。我相信很多人在修行过程中，尤其初发心的时候，很容易有这种法喜食的现象。比如说你自己去参加法会，或是呢你自己诵经，或是你拜佛，最后你会得到一种欢喜的境界，那就是得到法喜食了。那有法喜食的时候呢，有时候你就知道你好像精神特别好，不睡觉也没有关系了，不吃饭也没有关系了，或是吃少少的肚子都不饿了，那就是因为有法喜食。那甚至你会发觉你的口中有甘露水了，因为有甘露水呢，那个很甜，那所以呢那个甘露水，上人说那个甘露水呢叫做治家水，可以治百病的。那所以那个时候呢，不吃不睡都不累，因为得到了一种法喜食。那如果我们能够修行的时候，能够到这样的一个程度，那表示呢，我们这个就是真的是对修行呢开始已经有这种欢喜的程度了，就是表示我们对佛法呢有一种好要的心理。那喜欢参禅打坐的人，他们也可以得到禅悦为食的，就是禅悦食。比如说像色界天的天人，他们就是参禅打坐，所以呢，他们用这种禅悦食，那跟世间人就不太一样。因此呢，这个听法是非常重要的。它除了让我们这种法身慧命能够滋长之外，同时呢，它在我们生活中呢，如果你能够好要听法，久而久之的时候，不但呢能够明白佛法，同时呢我们在这个对物质的欲望，比如说我们吃东西，我们也不挑剔了，因为我们不需要吃很多，或是呢我们不要挑特别好吃的东西来吃的，因为那个已经不是很重要。你反而会把这种怎么让我们对佛法更明白，然后呢更喜欢听法，那是反而是一个最重要的事情了。
So among the 84,000 Dharma doors, you can see all Dharma doors are number 1. It's said that all the Dharma doors are equal and level. None of them are better or worse than the other. You see them all with an equanimous mind. And in fact, there's no small and great. Rather, all the dharmas are spoken for living beings, causes, and conditions. This dharma is spoken for them. It matches their potential and allows them to transcend birth and death. That's a skillful dharma. And so, in terms of listening to the dharma, this is actually very, very important. We all need to eat food, and so that we can survive. If we do not eat, then we die. But in the same time, we have a dharma body as well. And so we need to actually eat dharma so that we have a full dharma body. How do we eat dharma? Well, that means we have to listen to the dharma. And by listening to the dharma, and take the dharma as our food, then our dharma body is nourished. And we'll naturally have a dharma joy, a happiness that comes from listening to the dharma. It's similar to like the joy of dhyana meditation, of Chan. and having the kind of, you could say, Chan bliss, the Chan joy of cultivation. So by listening to the sutras, one becomes very happy, is not tired at all. And one no longer needs food, even if no longer has food, one doesn't go hungry, and one doesn't sleep at all, and still one's not tired, one has energy. And so this is, you could say, how one is full of Dharma joy. I think many people might have this experience, especially when they just start learning the Dharma, and they're extremely vigorous in cultivation. They really begin to meditate, to recite, to bow, to listen to the sutras and teachings, and they're filled with this Dharma joy. They see how wonderfully happy and great this is, the Dharma is. And although they don't have much food to eat, or they get much rest, they're still full of energy. And in their mouth, they might have a kind of sweetness, kind of like sweet dew that's in the mouth. And Venerable Master said that how this sweet dew actually heals the myriad illnesses. It's very, very healthy for us. And so this Dharma joy allows us to, you could say, when we get to this stage of our cultivation, it gives us a true sense of this happiness whenever we study the Dharma. As I mentioned before, this is similar to how in the Chan meditation, we take dhyana joy as our food. Just like the heavens, the devas take dhyana samadhi or dhyana concentration as their food. So listening to the Dharma is extremely important. Not only will our wisdom increase, but during this life, as we learn the Dharma, we begin to understand more principle. We develop in our wisdom life and our Dharma body. And so for instance, we no longer become so picky about food, trying to get the best tasting food, trying to, spend all the time on that. But rather, we make learning the Dharma the most important. We prioritize the Dharma.
最近呢，我听到上人讲到有关这个2个故事是有听法的，那我跟大家分享一下。第一个是讲到佛的弟子叫富罗那弥多罗尼子，这个富罗那弥多罗尼子呢是佛的10大弟子里头呢说法第一的，最会讲经说法。他不但是在释迦牟尼佛住世的时候最会讲经说法，在过去的七佛呢的时候呢，富罗那弥多罗尼子就已经是说法人的第一了。所以呢，他不是今生今世才会说法的。那上人就说，为什么他这么会讲经说法呢？因为呢，富罗那弥多罗尼子呢，在过去生中他喜欢听法，所以呢，你要会说法呢，就要先学会听法，因为听法是一个因，那说法就是一个果。那富罗那弥多罗尼子在以前呢，他只要有这个讲经说法的时候，法会呢，他都会非常欢喜的听。那他一定跪在地上呢，很恭敬的合掌。就因为这样的原因呢，所以呢，以后他就呢，不但喜欢听法，自己呢也变成很喜欢就是很好要说法，而且也很会讲经说法。
So recently, I heard 2 stories that the Venerable Master said about the principle of listening to the Dharma. The first one is about Venerable Purnamaittreya Putra, who was the foremost in speaking the Dharma. In fact, he was the foremost in speaking the Dharma for the last 7 Buddhas. And so he was not the best in speaking the Dharma this life, but for many lives. Why was he such an excellent Dharma speaker? The Venerable Master explained that because in his past lives, he truly enjoyed listening to the Dharma. He really prioritized listening to the Dharma. Wherever the Dharma was spoken, he would go to listen. And so for those who are interested in learning to speak the Dharma, that they should go and listen to the Dharma. That is the cause. Listening to the Dharma is the cause. And then naturally the result is having the ability to speak Dharma with eloquence. So at that time, whoever spoke the Dharma, he, Purnamaittreya Putra, would go and kneel to listen to the Dharma very respectfully. He went wherever there was Dharma to listen. And so he really, you could say, enjoyed learning the Dharma and also later enjoyed speaking the Dharma.
另外一个故事是上人讲到 以前呢有一位金山活佛，这个金山活佛呢是很出名的，在金山寺呢很多人都知道他，他有很多这些神通的事迹。那金山活佛呢，他听说呢从很高的这个塔跳下来，那也没有受伤。同时呢，那个庙里面呢，如果没有米了，那方丈和尚呢就会要他去化盐。那金山活佛呢就会念咒他会念那个咒，说米来米来，那个米呢就会来了。所以他有很多这个神通事迹。但是上人说呢，这个金山活佛呢，虽然他这样子，但是只要有任何法师在讲经说法的时候，那个金山活佛就非常的恭敬，跪在那边，不管那个地板呢是那种石块的或是砖头的，他就跪在那边。那个法师讲2个钟头呢，他就跪2个钟头都不动的，很恭敬的。所以呢，这个金山佛平常看起来好像是他的行径是很怪异的，就是跟别人不一样。但是等到他听法的时候，却是毕恭毕敬的。所以这个就是对法的一种恭敬，也表示呢，即使他是一个活佛，都来示现说他呢还是要听法的。那我们也知道，这个上人以前呢，他曾经请过很多法师来讲经说法，教化他的弟子。其中有一个是慧生法师，那上人就请他来讲这个梵网经的菩萨戒。那我曾经看过这个照片，这个慧生老法师在讲经的时候，上人也是跪在旁边呢，恭恭敬敬的就在那边听法。所以呢，你看这个上人自己本身也是对佛法这么明白了，那甚至可以已经是对我们来讲是一个非常，也可以讲说来教导我们怎么了生脱死的一个导师了。但是他对法呢还是这么恭敬，还是这么好要，而且以身作则来做示范，教导我们说对佛法要非常恭敬之外，同时呢一定要把这个听法当成是很重要的一个事情。
So the next story is about his name was he received a nickname, or the name not exactly a nickname. He received another name which is called the Living Buddha of Gold Mountain Monastery. He's extremely famous within China because he was renowned for his spiritual abilities. For instance, one time he jumped down from a very high stupa and he wasn't injured at all. He was perfectly fine. And the other time in the monastery there was no rice, so the abbot of the monastery asked him to go and find some rice, to go beg for some rice. So he went outside and recited this mantra, come rice, and he had some rice. And so he had a lot of various stories that you can say are kind of quite amazing. But regardless of this, the living Buddha, his name Living Buddha, when he met any Dharma master speaking the Dharma, he would be extremely respectful. He would kneel there on the side, regardless if the floor was carpet, I don't think I have carpet, but if there was kind of like a rug, or if it was the hardwood floor or concrete or stone, he would kneel there and listen to the Dharmas. If they spoke for 2 hours, he would kneel there for 2 hours and not move. Extremely respectful and extremely deferential. Although you could say the living Buddha in many ways was quite a special monk. He was quite, you could say, in a way eccentric. He was different from your ordinary monk in his appearance and what he did. But when it came to the Dharma, he became very, very respectful and very, very, you could say, in accord with the Dharma. And so even this great Dharma master, the living Buddha, he still manifested this, you could say, he showed us how to be respectful to the Dharma. He wanted to show us how important listening to the Dharma was. Not just the living Buddha, even the Venerable Master was very respectful to the Dharma. I believe people know that the Venerable Master requested many monks to come and teach the Dharma. And so I remember the Venerable Master invited Venerable Hui Sung to come and speak. And Dharma Master Hui Sung spoke on the Brahmanet Sutra. And I saw in a picture, the Venerable Master was kneeling on the side, very respectfully listening to the Dharma. So you could see The Venerable Master, although he was somebody you could say for us, really understood the Dharma, so much that he was teaching us how to cultivate, how to realize, how to end birth and death. But still for him, he still was so respectful in learning the Dharma. He wanted to show us how important it was to learn the Dharma.
这首偈颂说念处为功跟利剑，这个念处就是讲四念处，那根呢就讲五根，正勤呢就讲四正勤，那神足这个读作车也可以，读作居也可以，因为古代他们就讲居。那神足车就讲这个四如意足，还有五力啊，这也是37道品里头的，后面还有曲觉分，还有八正道，所以呢，就是这个偈颂主要在讲这个第五地的菩萨呢，他对这种37道品呢，其实呢已经都修学过了，而且开始圆满了。那这个四念处呢，叫做观身不净，第二个是观受是苦，第三是观心无常，第四是观法无我，这叫做四念处。那为什么有四念处呢？因为以前佛要入涅盘了，那个时候呢，阿难尊者他心都乱了、慌了，因为他还不到证四果的时候。那么，所以呢，他那个时候定力还不够，因此呢，看到佛要入涅盘，阿难尊者呢不知所措。这个时候呢，那个天眼第一的阿那律尊者就告诉阿难尊者说：“佛要入涅盘了，你应该赶快去请示佛4件事情。其中有一个就是说，那佛住世的时候，我们依佛而住；现在呢，佛不住世了，我们要依什么而住？那佛说呢，我不住世的，你们要依四念处而住，就是讲这个四念处。”
So here in this verse, it says, the stations of mindfulness are his bow. This refers to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It says the roots are his sharp arrows. This refers to the 5 roots. Then it says the right efforts are his horses. This is the 4 right efforts. And then the basis of spirit, or you can say the basis of spiritual mastery or power, is his carriage. This refers to the 4 dharmas for spiritual mastery. And he says that and the solid armor of 5 powers, which refers to the 5 powers, and so forth, into the 8-fold noble path, which is all added up together is the 37 wings of awakening. This bodhisattva is able to perfect these 37 wings of awakening and cultivate the way. So the first one, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, refers to what? It refers to one's mindful that one contemplates one's body as impure. One contemplates that feelings are suffering, are characterized by suffering. One contemplates that one's thoughts are impermanent. And one contemplates that dharmas are fundamentally without self. So these are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The story goes that when the Buddha was about to enter peri-nirvana, that Ananda was quite distraught. And at that time, Venerable Aniruddha spoke to Venerable Ananda and said, "You need to ask the Buddha some questions before he enters nirvana." Venerable Ananda said, What should I ask? And so Venerable Aniruddha explained to him, one of these questions he said is, when the Buddha is in the world, we rely on the Buddha to cultivate for instruction. But once the Buddha leaves, on what can we rely? Where should we reside? Where should we dwell? And so Ananda said, that's a very good question. And so he went to the Buddha and asked him, when you're in the world, we can rely on you to cultivate. But when you're no longer with us, on what should we rely on? As the Buddha told him, you should rely on the 4 foundations of mindfulness.
这个4念处呢，是要我们做观的，就做一个观想。第一观呢，叫做观身不净，就是我们要观照、观想，我们身体是不清净的。在我们身体的，你看，就是在我们的脸部、头部的地方呢，2个眼睛、2个耳朵、2个鼻孔，还有这个1个嘴巴。 那这个七孔呢，长流不尽。你这个耳朵里面有耳屎，眼睛里头呢有眼屎，那这个鼻子里面也有鼻屎，那这个嘴巴里面呢也有这些痰或是不清净的东西。那事实上呢，你怎么清理这些东西呢，还是不干净的。所以呢，我们每天洗脸或是你去怎么清理这些呢，它还是永远不干净，永远会流出不清净的东西。那我们呢，还有大小便这也是不干净的。所以呢，身体的9孔叫长流不尽，每天都有这些不清净的东西排泄出来。另外呢，我们身体上有很多的毛孔，这些毛孔呢，皮肤的毛细孔也一样，它会排泄出很多这些不干净的东西。我们每天呢要洗澡，那洗澡呢，不管你洗1次、洗2次、洗3次，你洗了以后呢还是要洗，不是说你洗过了以后它永远干净了，因为呢这个我们的皮肤里头还是会有这些毛细孔呢排出不干净的东西。因此其实整个身体呢光从外表来看就是不干净的，因为这个身体呢是假合的，是从地大、水大、火大、风大4大假合而成。那身体的外面呢只是一层皮就是一个臭皮囊。可是等到老的时候呢，这个皮就皱了就是发白面皱，头发白了，那这个皮肤都变皱了。那个年轻的再漂亮也没有用了，因为到老的时候呢，就是每个人呢都没有办法去避免的。那光从外表这样来看呢，这个身体就不干净了，何况这个身体里面，我们如果看到人家在手术那个照片，5脏6腑一打开，其实里面呢大概没有人喜欢看的你就知道其实这个身体都是不干净的。
So first contemplation is the contemplation that the body is impure. So if we just look at our head, we have our 2 eyes, we have our 2 nostrils, we have our 2 ears, we have our mouth. And so we have in total 7 orifices on our head. And now these orifices often, you could say, leak impure substances. For instance, our eyes have our the stuff that comes from the eye, or the ears also have things that come from the ear, and our nose has, you can say, snot and impure substance coming out, and even in our mouth we have phlegm and saliva. All these things are not the most pure, are kind of, you could say, even disgusting. And so we have these things coming out of our orifice all the time. Not to mention that we also have to use the restroom, and then we have urine and excrement that come out of our other orifices. And so you can see that our 9 orifices are always leaking impure substances. They're always excreting impure substances. So it's not very pleasant. This body actually isn't very pure at all. In addition, our body is covered with, you could say, hair pores, little pores that for each of our hairs. And our air pores all also excrete waste from them. For instance, we sweat or other substances come out. And so therefore, we often have to bathe. So even if we bathe every day, we can bathe 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. Regardless how many times we bathe in our lives, we never can say if we finish bathing, we're always going to be pure and clean from then on. We always have to bathe because our body is always leaking or excreting other substances that need to be cleaned off. So just from the external perspective, you can see how unclean the body is, how impure the body is. It's just a combination of the 4 elements. You can say a false combination of 4 elements. It's not reliable. False meaning it's not ultimate. It's just a temporary combination of 4 elements that come together. And so in reality, all our body is just this external covering of a skin for all this stuff inside. And so it's just like from the external perspective, it's just a skin bag, a bag of skin with various things put inside. So we see that even the outside is impure, how much more the inside. When we actually look inside, it's even more, you could say, disgusting. how many people like to look at a person when their body is cut open, for say at surgery, and you see all the various organs and internal body parts? That's really oftentimes not very pleasant to look at. So outside is not clean, inside is even worse in terms of it being more distasteful and unpleasant. And as we grow older, no matter how beautiful we are when we're young, we will grow wrinkles, our hair will turn white. And so in reality, this skin bag, this body is quite impure.
佛为什么要我们观身不净呢？因为佛知道我们对每个众生对我们的身体会产生贪爱，认为这个身体呢是我，然后呢我这个身体呢是可以呢永远是属于我的，或是呢我要把我的身体呢打扮得更漂亮、更好看。这个因为有这样的执着，事实上佛知道这个身体只是像个房子。人呢到这个世间上来，这个身体呢就像个房子，你等到有一天房子坏掉了，你就必须再换一个房子，就是到六道又去轮回了。因此呢，佛就是要破我们的执着那事实上我们会不会执着？都会的。我们每天呢，很多人都会去照镜子，看看呢自己呢身体上哪些地方呢不干净了，要把它清洗一下。或是有些人呢会想就是对镜自怜呢，就是也有这样子的就是看看自己会有一种好像蛮欣赏自己的。我为什么会这样讲呢？因为我大概2年前呢，我去了台湾，那我就坐火车从高雄呢要到台北去，这个坐的是那个火车很快的，高铁大概2个小时呢就可以到了。那我就坐在火车上，在我那个左道另外隔壁呢，我看到有一个很年轻的一个女众，她一上车呢就拿了一面镜子在照镜子左看右看就对着镜子在照。那你知道我从高雄坐到台北她就拿着镜子一直照，我就觉得很奇怪，为什么这1-2个钟头她都不会觉得厌倦这个镜子照过来照过去，然后从不同的角度在照自己。那为什么他做这个事情一点都不会，也不累，也不产生这种厌倦感？我就觉得很奇怪。那这是大概是因为中国人讲说“女为悦己则容”，大概很多女众他们对身体的执着贪爱更厉害一点。那事实上，这个也有不只是说女众，我相信男众都有。那么佛呢知道这是因为众生的一种贪爱执着，所以要我们生一种厌离心如果你不生这种厌离的话，你对这身体呢一直以为它是很好的、很漂亮、很干净的。因此呢，佛就教导我们要观身不净。
So why did the Buddha ask or teach his disciples to contemplate the body as impure? Because he knows that living beings all have an attachment, and you could say a fondness for their bodies. We think that it is us. We mistakenly think that our body is us. And then we also want to make this body beautiful. We want to make it very attractive. But the Buddha sees it's just a house that we come to live in temporarily. When this house falls apart, or this body of ours breaks down and dies, then we go and get a new house. We get a new body. And so for the Buddha, he wants us to break our attachment to this body so that we no longer get bound up by attachments to this body. And for instance, I know oftentimes people look in the mirror and we need to clean ourselves. We kind of look and see, okay, what we need to clean here and clean there. But at the same time, for some people, they look in the mirror and they can really spend a lot of time admiring themselves in the mirror. They kind of see, oh wow, I'm so beautiful, or etc., etc. I remember 2 years ago, I was in Taiwan, and on the high-speed rail from Kaohsiung to Taipei, I was sitting on the train, and I saw. So this trip usually takes about 2 hours. It's a very high-speed train, and across the aisle there was a young laywoman, or not a laywoman, a young lady who was just sitting there, and she had a mirror where she was looking at herself left, looking herself right, looking up and down, all over. And she was doing that for the entire 2-hour trip. And she didn't have one thought of being tired or find it boring or anything. I thought that was quite amazing, quite not strange. It was just, wow, this person, he can just look in the mirror for such a long time. So there's a Chinese saying that for females, they have a very strong attachment to the body, and making it beautiful. And so, of course, in the end, this is also just not only applied to females, but also applies to men as well. So that's why the Buddha taught this method of contemplating the body as impure, to have us develop a sense of non-attachment to the body, so that we can understand this body is not us and not get so attached to it.
虽然我们对很多像我们的身体或是事物有一种执着是不好的，可是呢，如果有时候我们在修行过程中有一点执着也是好的。为什么？你一开始有一个执着，等到你对佛法更了解的时候，你慢慢要把这个执着给放下。那所以就像刚刚讲那个年轻的女士呢，如果她呢能够把这种就是照镜子的这种精神呢拿来修行，那我保证她成功的。为什么？因为她能够对一个法门呢就是一门深入她可以这样子，好像做这个事情都不疲厌。那你想想看，如果用这种精神态度来修行的话，一定成功的。所以其实很多这种做事情呢，我们只要把这种心态转一转，就是说以前我们执着什么事情，我们现在呢觉得它不好了，放下来。但是呢，现在有一个更好的，我也可以呢来就是用这种执着的精神跟态度来修行或是帮助别人的时候，其实也是一个好的法门。不过这样的法门呢，到一个程度还是要放下，因为佛呢也都会教导我们的，说你呢修行的时候呢就像你有一个竹筏你用一个这个竹筏要过河了，等到你过了这一条河以后呢，你就必须要把这个竹筏给舍掉了，你不要再背着这个竹筏继续走路，那会累死你。所以佛在《金刚经》就讲说呢，我所说法如法喻者法上应舍，何况非法。就是我讲的法呢，都是像一个让你渡河的工具。等到你渡完河了，你这个工具呢一定要舍掉，不然呢你背着它走，那你不但呢累，而且呢你会让你呢走不到一个目的地的。
Although we can think that our attachments to things is not good, still at the same time having a little bit of attachment is okay at the start of our cultivation, and because then after we cultivate with this attachment a little bit, we can put it down. So for instance, this young lady who looked at this mirror with such vigor, if she could take that vigor of looking into that mirror and apply it to her Dharma practice, I guarantee she would have some accomplishment. She would have some result from her single-minded application of a method. So you can see she definitely had a lot of energy in doing something. And so for us, all we have to do is just turn our mind. We could just take something, for instance, we know we are attached to something, and we put it down and we pick up a Dharma door, we pick up some other thing, and we start off cultivating it. We pick up some Dharma door, or we turn that attachment to helping others. This is just a beginning point. Of course, at some point, we will have to put down this attachment as well. Because as the Buddha taught, all his teachings, the Dharma doors, were like rafts to help us cross over the river. So at a certain point, we will need to put down this attachment as well. So in the Vajra Sutra, the Buddha teaches how, he says all his teachings are like rafts. They help us to cross over to the other side. And so once we finish using the raft and we get to the other side, we shouldn't carry it with us and walk with the raft, because one, it will be very heavy and burden us. On the other side, that will prevent us from realizing and arriving at our destination.
四念处的第二关叫做观受是苦。 受就是一种领受、纳受、感受。比如说什么受呢？有人骂我，我就觉得不舒服，那就是一种感受了。或是呢，天气很冷，你衣服穿得很少，当你的皮肤接触到冷空气，就会有一种受感受了。你会觉得哦，好冷，那个就是一种受。那所以这个受呢，佛就教导我们，你要观什么？观所有的受都是一种苦，没有一种受是乐的。那你说，有时候如果我假设说，刚刚讲你穿衣服啊，你有一件衣服了，那这件衣服呢，你穿在身上很舒服你觉得第一个它让你呢变得更漂亮了，更好看了。可是如果有一天这一件衣服你比如说坏了、掉了，或是呢你这个衣服呢已经脏了，就甚至被一个东西给染污了。它本来是一个好的东西，你现在失去了，你这就产生一个痛苦，因为你有执着。所以任何这种受呢，本来是可能是快乐的，到最后还是变成一个痛苦。你比如说，你有一个很好的家庭，有慈爱的父母那这个兄友弟恭、兄弟姐妹都处得很好，这家庭很和乐，每天呢跟家人住在一起呢，就是一种天伦之乐世上最好的享受了。可是呢，我们都知道这个家庭呢，一定会怎么样？到最后爱别离苦的，就是你不管你最爱的、最喜欢的人，有一天都一定会分手的，不是生离就是死别，一定的，这是没有办法避免的。那如果你这种乐多的时候，最后呢一定是苦是更厉害的。为什么？因为你产生了执着。所以佛就教导我们，所有的在世间上的苦都是乐这个乐呢都是苦的因。因为呢你对这个乐不是真乐，它不究竟的，它会变坏。但是你对它贪爱了，所以最后呢它变成一个苦。因此佛教导我们要观受是苦。这个受呢，本来有3种的。第一个叫苦受，就是苦的受，你不喜欢的，碰到逆境，你不喜欢的，你感受就是苦。第二个叫乐受你喜欢的顺境了，你就产生爱了，贪爱，你就觉得很好这是一个快乐。那第3个叫不苦不乐受就是你碰到事情了，也不觉得苦，也不觉得这种乐了。那可能有些事情呢，事不关己，就是说有些事情在你生活中，它对你没有产生任何重大的影响，所以你也不觉得苦，也不觉得乐。可是不管怎么样呢，这些苦跟乐到最后其实都是一种苦。所以呢，佛要我们去做观，在世界上任何的事情，如果你用那种8苦来看，8苦交间，就是生老病死苦、爱别离苦、怨憎会苦、求不得苦、无因炽盛苦，没有一个是乐，全部都是苦。因此呢，如果我们知道所有的这种受都是苦的话，那我们就会生一种厌离心，因为你觉得这个世界太苦了，那我当然不希望在这里受这个苦。因此佛是要我们产生厌离以后呢，你才有一个动力要修行来修道的。否则每个人觉得这个世间是不错的，那会产生贪爱，你就不愿意走了。
So the next contemplation is that feelings, our sensations, are suffering, are characterized by suffering. So, for instance, if somebody scolds us, we might feel uncomfortable. We might feel upset. We have these kind of internal experiences. Another example would be, for instance, when it's cold outside, and our skin comes into contact with the cold, and we have feelings of being cold. There will also be some senses of suffering or difficulty. This makes us not very happy. On the flip side, perhaps we wear clothing that's very comfortable, very smooth, and very makes us feel that we're very beautiful and attractive, and it causes us to be very happy around these things. However, once we get this kind of attachment, this kind of enmesh in this kind of happiness and attachment, then at one point this clothing will deteriorate. It might get dirty or might get stained, and then we have suffering because we attach to it being a certain way that we really liked. So anything that happens, if it could it's anything that could be very good, but in the end it will have to decay, it will go away. So for instance, another example would be having an extremely good family. Perhaps we have loving parents, harmonious brothers and sisters, a very caring family. Everybody's very happy together. And when we're with our family, it's like being in the heavens. We're so happy and full of enjoyment to be with all these people. But in the end, I think we all know that we have to leave one another. Perhaps people leave and go to a far away, or perhaps people will pass away. So in the end, we all have to depart from one another. And at this point, we become very sad and full of suffering, because all the amount of that kind of happiness we had, that kind of attached happiness we had, will be the result of that is a corresponding suffering when that happiness is no longer fulfilled. Because this happiness is just a cause for the result of suffering. This kind of happiness is not an ultimate happiness. This is what the Buddha was pointing at, because this happiness is impermanent. It's not lasting. So the Buddha wanted us not to attach to this kind of happiness that wasn't true. So sensations or feelings are categorized into three kinds. One is a sensation that is you can say characterized by suffering, and for that it's something that goes against our wish, and so we don't like it. Another one is that of happiness, and something that's very pleasant. You say a feeling of pleasant, and so we give rise to a sense of greed and attachment to this pleasant state. Or we have an experience that is not characterized by suffering or pleasure, and so then we don't really give rise to neither rejection or greediness. So these are how the sensations are classified into these three different sensations or feelings. But the Buddha told us to contemplate all three of these as characterized by suffering. If we contemplate the list of the 8 sufferings, there's the sufferings of the first 4, the old age, birth, old age, sickness, and death, and then it's followed by being apart from those we love, being with those we hate, being not getting what we wish for, not getting what we want, and the kind of the burning blaze of our 5 skandhas. Our 5 skandhas are also often are kind of just full of suffering. And so by understanding this, by being reflective and contemplating that all the feelings are characterized by suffering, we can then give rise to a sense of renunciation. We can put it down, and we can then cultivate the way in search of something more ultimate, more lasting. Because if we really are attached to all these feelings of the world, then we don't want to leave this world. We just get attached to this world, and we don't really want to leave it. We don't really want to cultivate, because we are enmeshed in all the worldly feelings and sensations.
第3关叫做观心无常。我们的心是无常的哦，因为现在讲这个心不是我们的真心，是我们的识心、分别心。我们的心呢，常常变来变去，我们捉摸不到的，就是这个心呢，同样的事情，但是你会用不同的态度来看待。比如说你看某个人，就是你很喜欢他，所以呢，因为你喜欢他，所以他做什么事情，不管他做得好做不好，那做得好你当然很高兴，做不好你也会原谅他，不会责怪他。可是另外一个人，你跟他缘不好，可能他做什么事情你都很挑剔或是会找他麻烦。他事情做得再好呢，你也要嫌他做得不好。那他事情不好呢，你更生气了一定是这样子的。所以有时候呢，同时呢，比如说你叫这个人，你顺眼的人去帮你做个事情，他做不好了，你都可以原谅他，甚至再教他说，你可以怎么样把这个事情做好。可是另外一个人呢，你可能呢就要对他发大脾气了。那为什么？因为我们的心是无常的，同样一个事情，但是会有很多不同的标准。另外呢，像 我们的心也是常常变化的，会随着境界来转变的。为什么会这样子呢？因为我们都喜欢顺境啊，喜欢好的境界啊，就是我们所欢喜看到的，我们所欢喜听到的。那可是对那些我们不喜欢的，我们会产生这种烦恼或是生气。我记得呢，这个上人讲过，他以前在东北三元寺的时候呢，那时候过年了，有一次呢就写了对联贴在门上，这个门上呢就贴了4个字，就智慧如海。那有一个沙弥呢，他看到那个智慧如海，哇，就很高兴，他就站在那边呢，看着智慧如海，然后就读着智慧如海，智慧如海。那上人呢，看他这样子，就跟他讲说，我说呢，你是业力如海。哇，他听了就很生气，说就来反问上人说：“你怎么说我是业力如海呢？你为什么这样说我？你凭什么说我是业力如海？”那上人说：“我说你业力如海，你应该高兴的啊！你为什么还要来责骂我呢？”这个沙弥呢，就有一点搞不清楚了，为什么你说我业力如海，我还要高兴呢？那上人就说呢，我说的是你善业如海啊，你不是恶业啊，你造了很多善业，所以你是什么这个业力如海，你的善业呢，这个像海那么多的。他一听呢，就不生气了，非常高兴了。你想想看，这个人呢，这个心呢变化很快，就是看到呢，听到这个好听的话就是来称赞自己的，就产生欢喜了。那可是呢，如果你还不明白，以为呢这个话里头呢，对自己是一种诽谤，或是讲自己不好，就生了烦恼，或是发脾气了。那上人也又讲了，他说还有一次这个他也是碰到这个沙弥呢，他就说呢，我要把你给卖了。他就很生气，说你凭什么把我给卖了这个我是一个人，为什么你要把我卖了？你到底有什么资格？那上人就说：我把你卖了，你还要很高兴的。那这个沙弥呢，更是莫名其妙了。你把我卖了，为什么我还要高兴啊？那这个上人就说呢，我要把你卖给这个佛卖给释迦牟尼佛卖给阿弥陀佛，那你高兴了吧？果然呢，他就很高兴了。所以呢，人的这个心呢是变化无常的，就根据外面的境界，我们的6根对着6尘，你只要呢碰到你欢喜的，这个心就产生变化你碰到不欢喜的，心也产生变化，这就是心无常嘛，因为我们没有定力的缘故。
So the third contemplation is that our mind is constantly changing, is impermanent, or you could say our thoughts are impermanent. So this mind is pointing to our conditioned false mind. It's not talking about the true mind. This false mind of ours, this conditioned mind of ours, is always changing all the time. It's completely unreliable. For various things, it will see things in different ways. It's getting oftentimes moved around and thinking about things and getting different ways of seeing things. Take, for example, people. When you have a person you like, well, regardless if that person does good or bad, you are still accepting of that person. So you really like this person. If they do good things, then you're very happy. You think this is great. You really like this person. And the person does something that's not so good, then you still, because you like the person, you have in your heart a space that you can forgive them. You think, oh, it's okay. He'll maybe even do better next time. And so you're even willing to teach them. But however, if this other person, you really don't like them, you actually have some animosity toward them, well, regardless if they do good or bad, you're unhappy. If they do good, you're going to look for some kind of little mistake or some kind of fault in what they're doing and point it out, and because you don't like them. Or if they do something wrong or something bad, even more are you upset. You probably just get angry. And you can see that it's just because of our view is based on liking or just disliking this person. Our standard just changes depending on our mind. It's not stable. And so you can see that our mind is just conditioned by a lot of external things. it likes to just go with the external conditions. Whatever's happening outside, our mind just kind of follows along with it. And so, things we don't like, we just start having afflictions and start getting angry, and we just go along with this. When we just go along with this mind, it just gets us confused. So the Venerable Master told a couple stories about this. He said at one point when he was at Three Conditions Monastery, he wrote a matching couplet in Chinese, and he wrote 4 characters, 智慧如海, or translated in English to be wisdom like the sea. So one of the young novices, a Shami, came and he saw this small 4 characters, which is wisdom like the sea, and he thought this was really wonderful. So he kept standing there saying, wisdom like the sea, wisdom like the sea, wisdom like the sea. The Venerable Master said to him, I can finish this verse. I say, your karma is like the sea. And this Shami was extremely upset. He says, how can you say that about me? What right do you have to say that my karma is like the sea? And the Venerable Master says, no, you shouldn't be upset. In fact, you should be happy. And the Shami said, that's crazy. How can you say that my karma is like the sea? Why should I be happy about that? And the Venerable Master says, that's because what I'm saying is that I see your good karma is like the sea. Because in the past, you've done many good deeds. So now your good karma is like the sea. And then the Shami was very happy. He says, that was great. My good karma is like the sea. And so you can see how quickly people's mind changes. You just hear a little bit of praise and they're happy. If it's something that's a little bit critical, or maybe they don't quite understand what's going on, then they get angry and upset. So the people's minds are just so fickle and unstable. And another story with the same novice monk was the Venerable Master told him one time, you know what, I'm going to sell you. I'm going to sell you away. And the novice went, what? How can you do that? I'm a person. By what right and what right and what power can you sell me to somebody else? You have no right to do that. And the Venerable Master said, in fact, actually, what I sell you, you'll be actually very happy. Again, the Shami was quite beside himself, thinking, that's crazy. How can you sell me to somebody else? That's not fair. You're not allowed to do that. And then the Venerable Master said, I'm going to sell you to the Buddha, to Shakyamuni Buddha. I'm going to sell you to Amitabha Buddha. Is that okay? And he thought, the novice became very happy. Oh, yes, that was very great. And so you can see just the mind is just a fickle thing. It just changes left and right based on the external situation. And so what happens is usually our 6 sense organs come into contact with the 6 sense objects, and then our mind starts creating all these various things and starts changing back and forth. So you can see that our thoughts and our mind, our conditioned mind, is truly impermanent.
第4观呢叫做观法无我，这个法里面呢没有一个我这个在修行呢，你看这个我们讲这个四圣谛法，这个小乘人所修的，第一个要破的就是破这个我执，把这个我给空了，所以要人空。如果人空呢他就可以离苦得乐了，因为没有一个受苦的我。你找不到这个我的，所以呢，佛要我们破这个法执就是这个法里头没有一个我，没有一个这个受苦的我，或是受乐的我。那么这个呢，所有的法，8万世间法里头呢，都没有一个真实的我，所以这个并不是很容易了解我可以讲一个这个一个公案给大家听。我们都知道这个达摩祖师他以前呢，在河南嵩山少林寺面壁了9年。那个时候有一个法师叫神光法师，那么他那个时候叫神光，以后他叫做慧可法师就智慧可以了，就是中国禅宗的第2代祖师。那么他呢，就跪在那个就跪在达摩祖师打坐的地方，要求法，求达摩祖师呢来传法给他。那么达摩祖师呢不传，因为呢，他觉得他太贡高了，那么达摩祖师就面壁9年在那边参禅打坐，坐了9年。这个神光法师呢也跪在那边跪了9年， 有一天呢，神光法师呢就求达摩祖师传法给他。达摩祖师说呢，我不传法给你，除非呢这个天上下红雪了。那时候呢那个下雪了，而且积雪很深，所以呢达摩祖师故意呢要为难他，说呢天上下红雪的时候呢，我就传法给你。这个神光法师呢，他求法心切，他那时候呢看到有一把刀了，他就把那一把刀呢拿来，就把自己的手背左手背呢给砍断了。这一砍断呢，他身上血呢就流出来了，这喷出来了，那个整个雪地上呢都变成红色了。所以呢，他就捧着红色的血呢去见达摩祖师，说现在呢这个血呢变红色了，所以你应该传法给我。达摩祖师呢看这个神光法师呢这么的诚心来求法，知道呢这是一个在法之器了，就跟就跟他说法说要收他做徒弟了，来把法传给他。那这个时候呢，本来神光法师呢，他把自己手背砍断的时候呢，是到忘我了，因为他呢一心要求法，所以他不知道自己的手背呢痛不痛，没有这个问题的。等到达摩祖师呢答应要传法的时候呢，他才发现自己没有手背了，手好痛。所以呢，他就请这个达摩祖师呢说呢，这个祖师，我现在呢我的手好痛请你帮我安心。那达摩祖师呢，本来是问他说：“你哪里痛啊？”这个神光法师说：“我现在心很痛因为我的手没有手背了，我这手背现在很痛很痛。”那达摩祖师呢就说呢：“你的心痛，你把你的心呢拿出来，我来帮你安心。”那这个神光法师呢就去找他的心，找来找去呢就找不到，所以呢就回答说呢。密心了不可得，我找不到我的心那达摩祖师就回答说呢，语如安心镜，就说我已经呢把你的心给安好了，你现在就不痛了。所以呢，这个神光法师呢当下呢就开悟了，他就明白了。所以达摩祖师把这个法就传给他，说你现在呢智慧可以了，所以以后他叫做慧可就是他达摩祖师呢赐给他这个法号就叫慧可禅师了。那在这个痛的法里头呢，你看那个本来神光法师呢没有手背了，当然很痛我们有时候受一个小伤，被这个刀子稍微割破了一下，流一点血都很痛的，何况说整个手被这样砍断了。那这个痛的法里头呢，那这个慧可法师呢，他去找来找去，也没有一个痛的我，所以呢，他就因为这样子呢，他就开悟了。所以佛也要我们观什么？观这所有的法里头呢，不管你修学什么法门，那或是你受什么苦、受什么乐，这个法里头呢，没有一个真实的我。
So the fourth contemplation of the four foundations of mindfulness is that dharmas are without self. They do not have an essential nature. So in the Four Noble Truths, the first noble truth teaches us about suffering, an accumulation of cessation, and the way. If we can realize the Four Noble Truths, then one can break through the sense of self, of a me. We break through this kind of I, the creation of an I, a self. And once we're able to let go of ourselves, then we can leave suffering behind, because there's no longer a self or an I to receive the suffering. So in the 84,000 different dharmas that the Buddha talked about, so in addition to 84,000 dharmas that the Buddha taught, none of them have an essential nature. None of them have a self. In fact, this principle is not that easy to understand. So I'll try to illustrate this with a story. I believe people know the story of Venerable Bodhidharma, who, when he was he at one point was meditating in a cave, where now is where at the point was Shaolin Monastery, and Dharma Master Sun Guang had followed him to seek the Dharma. Later, he became known as Chan Master Hui Ke. Hui means wisdom. Ke, you could say, is literally, maybe you could say okay, or you've reached the level. So that basically his wisdom has reached an you could say an okay level, or a kind of a certain level. And so this Venerable Master Sun Guang was kneeling there behind Bodhidharma, who was meditating in front of a wall, and he was seeking the Dharma. He was requesting Dharma, hoping that Bodhidharma would pass the Dharma on to him. Now, Bodhidharma didn't pay much attention to him and sat there for 9 years, meditating, investigating Chan. Now, Venerable Master Sun Guang also then kneeled there for 9 years, waiting and seeking the Dharma. So, after 9 years, Bodhidharma spoke to Venerable Master Sun Guang and said, our Venerable Master Sun Guang said he would like to seek the Dharma from Bodhidharma. And Bodhidharma told him, only when it starts snowing red snow, will I pass the Dharma to you. And now at that time, there was a lot of snow all around. The snow was quite deep. So at this point, Venerable Master Sun Guang was extremely sincere to the utmost. And he took a knife and he cut off his left arm. And it started bleeding, and kind of blood got everywhere. And he grabbed some of the snow, which was red, and gave it to Bodhidharma and said, here, the snow is now red. Now Bodhidharma, Patriarch Bodhidharma saw Venerable Master Sun Guang's sincerity in seeking the Dharma, and so then knew that he was ready to receive the Dharma, and spoke the Dharma for him and took him as his disciple. So at the time Venerable Master Sun Guang, you could say, cut off his arm, he had no sense of self. He had a single-minded heart to seek the Dharma. And so there was no pain. But after he cut off his arm, and then Bodhidharma agreed to teach him the Dharma, he at that point started feeling the pain in his arm, and he was told Bodhidharma, my arm really hurts. This is extremely painful. Can you please, Chinese is anxing, or you can say quiet my mind, or make my mind peaceful. Could you please make my mind peaceful? And so Bodhidharma asked him, where does it hurt? He said, my mind hurts. So Bodhidharma told him, well, show me your mind. Take out your mind. And once you give me your mind, I'll make it peaceful. And so Venerable Master Sun Guang looked all over for his mind. He tried to find his mind, but he couldn't find it. So he told Bodhidharma, I can't find my mind. Bodhidharma's response was, I've already made your heart peaceful, or your mind peaceful. At that point, Venerable Master Sun Guang had a great awakening, and Patriarch Bodhidharma named him Venerable Chan Master Huike, or wisdom is okay. You know, wisdom. He reached a certain level of wisdom, so now he's Chan Master Huike. And you can imagine that how painful it was for us. If we just get a small cut, if we accidentally cut ourselves with a knife, we have a pain in our hand, or a pain that we find that's not pleasant at all. But for Venerable Master Huike, he had his whole arm cut off. That's truly a lot of pain. And but once you realize that there's no self, then you're not caught up in that painfulness. And so what we will try to do is to be able to contemplate that all dharmas are without self, without an essential nature.
这个四念处的观法无我，如果我们常常做这样的一个观法的话，那生活中会少掉很多麻烦，或是呢会让自己的生活过得更快乐。为什么这个所有的法里头没有我？那个即使在像42章经里头呢，佛都会教导我们说呢，他用一个譬喻说，如果这样假设好了。如果有人诽谤我们，或是说我们不好，一般人呢会很在意的，因为我们放不下我这个我。那可是呢，佛就教我们说呢，这个就像什么呢？如果有个人要送礼物给你，但是你不接受这个礼物，这个礼物是谁的呢？那当然是要送礼物的人，人家不收嘛，所以这个礼物还是他的。那佛又另外讲了一个譬喻说呢。仰天自唾，唾不及天，唾还己面。意思说呢，如果有个人呢，他对着这个天，对着天空来吐口水，那意思说有人呢，可能 就这样反过来讲，有人讲话呢，可能要来批评你或是诽谤你，那他就对着你来讲一些不好的话。可是呢，你不执着啦，你没有一个我，这个诽谤的法里面没有一个我嘛，那这种批评的法里面也没有一个我，所以呢，他呢就像对着天来吐口水一样。这个口水呢，唾不及天，它不会吐到天上。就是说，你既然没有一个我，就没有一个接受的我了，那你不会受这个批评诽谤影响的。可是呢，这个透还己面，这些批评诽谤的这些话呢，会回到哪里？回到那来批评你的人。意思说呢，这个人呢，他做这些事情，其实最后受害的是他自己，并不是呢那个被批评的人。被批评的人呢，如果他有执着，他就会受这个苦。可是呢，如果呢你没有这个我了，你不产生任何执着了，那其实呢，这个法里头没有这个我，所以呢，那你还是很自在的。可是呢，那个人呢就不自在了。
So this fourth contemplation of the foundations of mindfulness, that the dharmas are without self, is a useful contemplation. And if we really can use this contemplation throughout the day, then our days will become much less, but more free of affliction and worry. We'll be more happy. How does this work? Well, in the 40 section of the sutra, in the 42 sections, there's an example or one of the sections talks about if somebody slanders us, and we do not get upset. People slander us. Most people just get upset, and they can't put it down because they just have a very strong sense of self. So the Buddha gave an analogy is like somebody comes to give you a gift. If somebody gives you a gift but you don't accept it, who does the gift belong to? Well, of course, the gift is still the person who's trying to give you the gift. In terms of another example, it's like the sky. When somebody spits into the sky doesn't hold the spit. It has nowhere to land. So similarly, when somebody criticizes you or slanders you and you have no attachment, then you're just like the sky. The slander and criticism truly, if you look at it from this perspective, has no self. It has no essential nature, no intrinsic nature to it. It's just, it's just a conditioned thing. So we don't, if we're not attached to it at all, then we're just like the sky, and the criticism has nowhere to stay. It doesn't land on us. Rather, it just falls back to the person who spit, or the gift just returns back to the person who gave it. And so there's no, one doesn't suffer at all. So, however, if we are attached to ourself or attached to the Dharma, then we will experience suffering. But if we don't, then it's just like the sky, and it just goes back to the person who gave it.
那么为什么这个偈颂要讲说念处为弓？这四念处像个弓箭那个弓箭的弓一样。那五根作为一个利剑，这是一个武器这武器是要来伤害人的或是跟人作战的。为什么我们是要修行还需要这些武器呢？其实这是一个譬喻。譬喻什么呢？我们用四念处做弓，我们用五根做一个利剑来对抗烦恼的魔君。因为我们日常生活中有很多烦恼，这个烦恼呢就像一个大军压境一样每天给我们很多的苦。那因此呢，我们要用这个四念处还有五根来作为弓箭来抵抗这个烦恼的魔君。那这样我们就可以真正离苦得乐了。所以事实上这些37道品里头呢，因为它是针对这个所谓四圣谛法苦集灭道怎么来灭苦，所以呢每一个法门里头呢都可以让我们真正的从这个苦里头解脱。因此呢，这个在这个偈颂里头就做了很多的不同的譬喻，就是说我们每天要跟我们这些烦恼的魔君来作战。那这样的话，我们就不会被烦恼呢所困扰了。而且呢，我们从这个烦恼里头解脱以后呢，就是真正的离苦得乐。那这就是为什么佛要讲四念处的一个理由了，因缘了。
So here it says we take the stations of mindfulness the stations of mindfulness are his bow, the roots are his sharp arrows. So the four foundations of mindfulness are, in this analogy, a bow, and the five roots are the arrows that one uses the bow to shoot. So this is, you can say, a weapon. So why does Buddhism talk about a weapon? Aren't we cultivating Buddhism? Why do we have weapons? This is just an analogy. And we're using this analogy to explain that we're using the bow and the arrow to shoot down our afflictions and our suffering. We want to, you could say, vanquish the confusions and worries of all the various, you could say, internal and external demons that we have. And so we want to counter these. And so this is a method to allow us to counter the afflictions we have throughout the day. So the 37 Wings of Awakening all come for us to help us realize the Four Noble Truths and are the way for us to end our suffering and free us from difficulty. And so the Buddha gives many different analogies to give us a sense of what it means to cultivate and how to leave suffering behind.
到这里不知道大家对今天晚上我们所研究的四念处有没有什么问题？
So here I was wondering if anyone has any questions, particularly about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Was there people have any questions about that? So the sutra lecture will end here tonight. So announcements. I believe tomorrow is daylight savings, so we will need to move our clocks up an hour. So make sure you turn your clocks, move your clocks forward. Time is impermanent, maybe. What else? We have the Guanyin session coming up at the City of 10,000 Buddhas on March 16th to the 23rd. So people who want to join that, please sign up. You can call the City of 10,000 Buddhas and join that session, or you go to drbu.org. There's a place to sign up online. They'll have evening discussions on the Heart Sutra in English for those who are interested, as well as afternoon discussion for people who would like. What else will be happening? For that week, we won't actually have the Monday kind of Buddhism for the Modern Mind class, or the Thursday roundtable class. So just people can know that we'll not have events that week. Anything else? Okay. So people can take out the dedication of merit. It's in your behind your Dharma request sheet. And we could transfer the merit of this gathering to whatever you wish. Can you put your palms together? May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Please stand and bow to the Buddhas.